What's up, my beautiful people? Welcome to the War Room. You are now tuned into our very first edition of the political justice slash social justice edition of the War Room. And I am your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin. I'm here with my sister, Malissa Smith. She is an author and a women's boxing historian. And I'm here with Mr. Eddie Goldman. He is an award-winning sports journalist. And, we call him the conscious of combat sports. You guys, welcome back to the War Room today. We have to tell you right now that, in light of what's been going on in the world today, it's crazy because we have a political party amping up hate against our Jewish and LGBT communities. And so we felt like we needed to amplify stories that kind of keep you guys abreast of what's been going on. And my dog really is upset about all the bullshit that's been going on, if you can hear her in the background. However, so look, let's just talk about before we get we are going to talk about Club Q and the mass shootings that, I think we had 7 mass shootings in this past week. It is just a madness here in the United States. But we're going to kick off this segment because the highest court in the land is just straight up corrupt as fuck. And that's all I can say. And we just had a story come out, and I think what newspaper released that about Alito.
New York Times.
New York Times.
The New York Times posted this about Alito, not once but twice during Hobby Lobby, also divulged what the results of the case was going to be. So let's just talk about that. What do you guys think about? I mean, can Senator Sheldon, I think Sheldon Whitehouse, what's his last name? I don't even know the senator's name, but I saw his letter. White House yep. Wants code and ethics for the Justice Department. I mean, for these judges sitting on SCOTUS bench. So where do you guys think that's going to go? What do you think is going to happen with that? Clarence Thomas needs to be impeached. I do know that.
He shouldn't have been even approved because he lied his ass off during his confirmation hearings. They smeared Anita Hill, if you go back and look at that. And from what I understand, I knew somebody that knew a whole lot of people at the education department when Thomas was there. And they said what happened to Anita Hill was the least bad of a lot of things that went on. It's just that she came forward and spoke about it. And the politicians didn't support her and the media smeared her. And I think, again, history has proven her right. And now we have this situation with Alico again, pulling the same stuff. Isn't it a big coincidence? All these leaks seem to come from his decisions that he's written around the same type of thing. I don't know that anything's going to be able to get done because you're going to have, when are they going to get something done? You have a sort of a hung Congress coming in. And even with the Democrats, how are you going to get a big majority of senators even to go along with this? I just don't think, I think it's going to be very difficult to do that. It's going to take some worse scandals coming to light than just leaking decisions. But again, the media hasn't really made a big deal about Barrett and Kavanaugh and these others just lying their ass off, perjuring themselves during the congressional hearings and saying that Roe v. Wade was settled law, that they're not going to touch it. And the first chance they get, they overturn it.
That's right.
So why hasn't anything been done? There's really not enough consensus to do that, but that's also where the media comes in. The media can't just give them a pass. Remind people of that all the time, every day, that these people just are flat out liars. They lied to Congress, they lied to the people, and we can't believe a word that any of these people say.
I know that's it's sad to see because we want to believe, just like I wanted to believe when we talk about the sports industry and all the cheating and the betting and all this stuff that goes on. you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You want to say these guys that wear the robe, that like, the scales of justice and all of that stuff, you want them to have integrity, because, and we don't want double standards, right? It's like, why should the Supreme Court of all justices not bind themselves to a code of ethics?
Yeah, I find that shocking. And, when we think of the Supreme Court, certainly when I went to school, civics was still something that we were taught,
Right.
in the Supreme Court as the part of a very important trilogy, if you will, of what government is. And if we look at some of the successes in the sorry about that, guys, the preponderance of human rights in the United States, the Supreme Court has been an important arbiter of that. I mean, we look at Brown versus Board of Education and findings of that kind. But we also had Dred Scott, back in the Civil War. So there is an ebb and flow to how the court reacts. Where we are now is that we have justices who are extreme, who are really out of touch with the majority of the American public. 60 to 70% of the American public is on the one hand, and then you've got these extremists in the court. We have the case that, the seat that Merrick Garland should have had the opportunity to be voted on was held hostage by the Senate. And then you have the opportunity that came in place for Trump, and is frankly, to my mind, is the only reason that McConnell ever supported or kept supporting Trump to stay in place, was to fulfill his agenda of putting right-wing justices on the court. That's the only reason he did it, because he certainly couldn't stand the guy, but he wanted the court, and he got it.
And he
was successful. He held off a president from his rightful opportunity to put up a Supreme Court justice. So now look where we are. We are 6-3. And it's a very terrible extremist perspective that will continue to reverberate. The ethics issues are just the one little tiny piece of where we stand. And yes, it's an interesting issue, because in the lower courts of the federal system, there are ethics guidelines.
Right.
But in the Supreme Court, there are none. So you can even see this when the Dodds decision was leaked. Justice Roberts and his guys as the Chief Justice came out and says, "Oh, we're going to do an investigation." Well, how many months later is this? 6 months, 7 months later? Has anything been done? Has there been any indication of anything? No. And in fact, all that he says is, it's really terrible that people don't have confidence in the court, and, how irresponsible of the media to perpetuate this. Well, what do you think people are going to feel when they watch a public hearing and someone like Amy Coney Barrett looks straight into the camera and says, Roe is settled law. I will not touch it. Well, she did. And so did Kavanaugh. And there you go. They both lied.
And they have the lowest approval rating in like a 20, 30-year history. It's 40% right now.
See, I think there's a misconception that the Supreme Court is about law. The Supreme Court has always been about politics. Even when the law stays the same, it's the interpretation of the law. Just to give a few very famous examples, Melissa mentioned Dred Scott before the Civil War. Well, after the Civil War, you had Reconstruction, but then Reconstruction was basically reversed, and you had Plessy versus Ferguson, the so-called separate but equal doctrine. Then, in the 20th century, you had a very strong civil rights movement developing in the 40s and the 50s. A lot of things were going on. And then you had Brown versus Board of Education, which overturned Plessy versus Ferguson. The law was the same, but the Supreme Court interpreted it differently because of the politics. The Warren Court passed a lot of civil liberties type rulings. Warren was a Republican. We used to have liberal Republicans, something that you don't have really today. But the Warren Court was known for that, putting in the Miranda ruling and all these different things that happened during that whole period. Why? Because you had a strong civil rights movement, the development of the Black Liberation Movement, an anti-war movement, political movements on the left, all sorts of things were happening during that period of the 60s and 70s. Those retreated. Those movements went into crisis and fell apart. And so you had this whole revanchism, I guess is a word. I'm not sure if that's the best English word for it, but a revenge to reverse everything. The same forces that were against the New Deal in the 1930s that wanted the Supreme Court to outlaw the New Deal and couldn't because of politics are finally making their move. They say very openly, they want to destroy the administrative state. They want to get rid of Social Security. They want to get rid of Medicare. They want to get rid of all the civil rights legislation, all the equal rights legislation, on and on and on, the voting rights legislation, all of this. And now they've been making their offensive, particularly as they look at the demographics in the United States, and you see that it's heading to a point in a few decades where whites, again, which is not a really scientific category, but more of a social category, will no longer be a majority in the United States. And this is why they're moving now to codify all this anti-immigrant legislation, all this racist legislation, all this voter suppression legislation, and so forth, to hold on as long as they could. They completely freaked out when Barack Obama was elected. You had a black man as president of the United States serving 2 terms. They completely freaked out when Kamala Harris, a black woman with Southeast Asian roots also, South Asian actually roots, was elected vice president. And now you're going to have the top 2 Democrats in the U.S. Congress, Chuck Schumer in the Senate, a Jewish guy from Brooklyn, and probably Hakeem Jeffries, a black guy from Brooklyn. They're freaking out at this. They view this as a threat to them rather than that these people I just mentioned are fighting for the rights of all people that have been oppressed and marginalized and faced discrimination and exploitation and all of that. And this is similar, and at the same time, the U.S. is weakened internationally. The U.S. lost in Iraq, it lost in Afghanistan. It's been bad militarily in the 21st century. And this is also one thing that was part of Trump's Make America Great slogan again, to bring back the U.S. empire in some way. And now you have the Tea Party and you have the Trump movement or the election deniers, and this whole movement is going on, and it's basically trying to, you have this whole battle, and it's in some ways reminiscent of what happened in Germany in the 1920s and 1930s. In Germany, lost World War I and was in an economic crisis. There was some differences there. The working class movement and the left parties were much stronger than they are today. I'm not talking about the U.S. Democratic Party. You had, at one point, the second largest party in Germany to the Nazi Party was the Communist Party. They had 100 deputies in the German parliament. And the Social Democratic Party, which is to the left of the U.S. Democratic Party, was also very powerful, although they sort of moved to the center and they sort of lost a lot of their support as the sort of the center dropped out. And you have the move towards fascism, which is now openly talked about all over. So, as Melissa had mentioned, people openly wearing Nazi regalia, swastikas, so forth and so on, and being embraced by the Republican Party, which had been the party of Lincoln and Earl Warren and people like that now is directly embracing fascism. And even Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, said they're a fascist party now. And I think that's accurate. And they're on the offensive now. So the key battle that people have is to defend and expand all these rights and to defeat fascism, because they're very well funded and they're using the Supreme Court and putting in all these judges that shouldn't have been there, that lied their ass off to get in, and these lifetime appointments that they have, putting them in to try and push their agenda forward with the same laws, with the same constitution. It's all political. So the key thing is to mount a political fight against them. That's something that was key all along throughout history. And yeah, you have the legal arguments, you have to deal with all that. It's going to be next to impossible in the near future to pass any constitutional amendments the way that it's set up. It's not easy to do so, but you need some consensus for that. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. Again, it's been like decades since anything has been passed. So since the Republican Party has gone on this tear and this offensive, they tried it a little bit with Nixon, but Reagan was the key one, and then Newt Gingrich, and on to all the people that we got today. Then they're not going to agree to anything. So you have to fight them, and that means not just being in the street and forming mass organizations, not AstroTurf Foundation type organizations, but voting. And that's where these elections are really critical and really play a key role. You can't discount them as part of the whole struggle to promote, save, and expand democracy and fight fascism. That's one element of it. And that's why people have to be encouraged to be involved in this, and that will have an effect.
Well, I can say that, that's why this upcoming election between Warnock and Herschel Walker, Reverend Warnock, who's the current sitting senator from the state of Georgia, and his opponent, Herschel Walker, in a runoff becomes so critical. Because even though we are now at a 50-50 standoff in the Senate, which gives the swing vote to Vice President Kamala Harris, which means the Democrats are in control, that one additional vote is critical. Yes. One additional seat is critical because it then means there's a majority of one. It means all the committees are no longer shared. That means the committees are then in place with the chairperson coming from the Democratic Party. And it gives Chuck Schumer the maneuverability to put forth certainly all of the approvals of judges, no longer in question because he's got 51 votes. And there's a lot of other opportunities to continue moving forward with a justice and fairness agenda, even though the Congress will be in the hands of the Republicans. Having a Republican Senate at least allows us to put forth the judges that we need over the next 2 years, those that will be put forward in the lame duck, and then in the next 2 years. And then the opportunity to chair committees, which gives them a certain amount of power. But I want to get back to something else that you said, Eddie, which was this whole issue of the minority and this construct of replacement and all this nonsense.
It's replacement theory.
A replacement, quote unquote, theory, which is all of this business about, of whiteness somehow being under threat, whatever that friggin' means. But, and the notion that white hegemony or hegemony of white Christianness is somehow under threat, which is really just another way of saying the power elite want to stay in power. Absolutely. And the way they do that is by riling up their base of very poor people who have nothing better to do, who are fearful for their lives and are not smart enough or in a position. That's sort of the wrong thing to say. They are not in a position because of their economic issues and everything else. They're not in a position to be critical and thinking through the things that are being thrown at them. Because when you're a poor person in America, you're really poor. How many counties in this country have no health care at all? We're the
Right.
richest nation on earth, and there are millions of people who have no access to acceptable health care at its most basic. There are Doctors Without Borders set up camps in Arkansas just to give people medical care. That's an outrage. And these sons of bitches want to take away Medicaid and Medicare. Fuck them.
Right.
So, in some senses, people are so, it's like showing them door number 1, and this is what you can have if you have door number 2, and these people are trying to take away your right. It was like, what right? You have no rights anyway. When was the last time you could take your kids to the dang dentist? No. When was the last time your kids had a decent education?
Right.
When was the last time you were able to just get wellness care or prenatal care, postnatal care? This is just basic stuff. So all of this nonsense about white replacement theory is just a lot of dazzle to scare and terrify people.
It takes away from the serious issues. Like they're pumping
Exactly.
up DeSantis. I read a thing that says Republicans have controlled Florida, that's DUH, Florida, for the last 20 years. However, they are 41st in healthcare. They are 51st in unemployment benefits. And I know you guys heard about how they rigged the benefit system over there, the unemployment benefit system. 45th in tax fairness and 31st in housing affordability. So what does that tell you about your Republican Party? They're not doing anything but giving tax breaks to the wealthy, and they're taking whatever they can from the working class people.
And their Senator Rick Scott, who's trying to run against McConnell, he's a Medicaid fraud guy, and Medicare and Medicaid fraud, billions of dollars.
He holds the world record right now.
So give me a friggin' break. So where are we? So again, to Eddie's point, it's about education, and it's about putting things in terms that people understand. And what do people understand? They understand they are living in a very rich place and they don't have it. And we are in a country that says free choice is 9 types of toothpaste just in one brand. You can have Crest, you can have Crest whitener, you can have Crest plaque whitener,
sensitive,
you can have Crest full mint this and this and that and that. I'll tell you a story. I lived in Russia for 2 years, from 1992 to 1994.
Wow.
I came back to the United States on a brief for a week. Biggest mistake I made. But one of the things that happened was I went up to see my mom, who was living in Hudson, New York. She picks me up at the train, Amtrak train, coming up from New York City. And she says, honey, got to go to Walmart to pick something up. So we go off to Walmart. Now, my stepfather had issues walking, so he gets into one of these motorized carts. It looked like the size of a golf buggy, right? And he's zipping around Walmart, and the aisles are wide enough that 2 people can pass each other in carts. And it's got the biggest basket I've ever seen. I'm walking around, and I swear I hit the toothpaste aisle. It's so high I can't see over it. It's at least 10 feet high or 8 feet. It was a lot taller than me.
Just for toothpaste.
And I'm looking and mouthwash and this and that and this and that. And I'm looking around, and I literally had to leave because I'm looking at this store, and I realized there is more goods in this store than in the entire Russian Far East where I lived. I lived in the Russian Far East, and there was not that store. One store had more than anything. That entire part of the half of Russia was in that store.
I believe
and
it.
I thought to myself, this is crazy. This is democracy at work. Because I'm looking at the people walking
Capitalism
around.
at work.
Capitalism at work. American capitalism. Democracy. Right. I have free choice to choose toothpaste. Right. That is democracy in action, not anything else. Because I'm looking at these people. They're unhealthy. they're overweight, or just looking sick.
Keep them
This was
poor, keep
not
them sick.
health.
Keep them
Keep them
poor,
poor,
keep them
keep them
sick.
sick, keep them
Keep them
stupid,
and right, keep them in the
keep
dark.
them dumb.
Exactly.
And it really freaked me out. It really did, because I was living in Russia at a time of literally a collective nervous breakdown. You know, I mean, they don't even have a nation anymore. They grew up in the
Right.
Soviet Union, doesn't exist. You know, it's like if you
The
wake
wall
up
had
one
come
day,
down. Right.
there's nothing there. So, but what we have in America is an illusion, is what what I'm getting at. And our understanding of what democracy is and what freedom is not about toothpaste. It's about fundamental rights. It's about justice.
Human rights. Right.
It's about human rights. It's about the ability for our children and our families, our colleagues, the people who are our neighbors, to have fairness in where they work, in the food that they eat, in the education that they receive, and the opportunities they have for that growth and development. And that is something that these sons of bitches want to take away.
Right. Because then they can rob our treasury.
Term.
Right.
Yes.
And rob the treasury, because you've seen what happens when some of these countries go under. You know, a lot of the weapons wind up in other countries. They sell off everything. That's what happened in Russia.
I watched it in front of me in Russia,
Yeah.
watching all of the state-owned go to the highest bidder.
To the highest bidder.
I
right.
watched the corruption. I watched people literally giving cash bribes in the open.
Well,
right in the open.
Yeah, our Supreme Court is about to hear a case that may just legalize bribing politicians. It's that case is called Percoco versus the United States, and that's coming up soon. But look, if you guys are voting in Georgia, you need to, the state runoff election now starts on the 28th, right? Early voting is happening. Some counties already started, but you guys can go to iwillvote.com, or is this iwillvote.com. You guys find out where your polling place is. Do not let those white boys intimidate you at the polls. I don't care what they say, how they say it. You cast your ballot. And then if they give you a really hard time, you call DOJ and report them for intimidation, because that's a federal crime, as far as I know. So do you guys want to talk about Elon's takeover, Twitter takeover? And while we're running away from Twitter, and where are we going?
Well, where we're
They're to
going,
the bitter end, but yes,
alternatives.
He's trying to kill off Black Twitter.
Well,
and everything else.
And everything else.
The thing with Musk that a lot of people have pointed out, there's a journalist named Dave Troy that I think has some very insightful articles on that, and some other people pointed out what Musk is doing doesn't make any business sense. It's not just a question of a mistake, but when you openly bring back all these fascists and people who spread misinformation, the advertisers flee. And advertising is the key way in which Twitter has been making money. You fire all these people that deal with your content moderation, you're running into all kinds of trouble with regulators, particularly from the EU. So why is he doing all this? Because he doesn't care. He sees Twitter having another purpose, and that's to spread his uber-libertarian, anti-government, right-wing, racist, misogynist propaganda. That's what he wants to use Twitter for. He may not succeed. A lot of this stuff may not succeed, but seems to be more important to him than just bringing back advertisers and sort of playing it safe. And it's a question of where to go. Well, that's complicated, because I don't think there's one answer to that, where there's any clear alternative. Like when MySpace imploded, you had Facebook and Twitter were relatively new, and people went over there. Now you have a number of relatively new social media sites. Tribal is one, but there's not a lot of traffic on it. There's another one called Post, which is still in beta. And then there's a lot of people talking about Mastodon, but there are all kinds of problems. That's the mainstream media seems in love with Mastodon, but I pointed out I got on one of their servers, and straight away my antivirus program comes on and said there was a phishing attack from a well-known malicious site, and I wrote them and didn't get any response. Now, it may not be that way on every server, but it's very complicated because you
Right.
sign up on different servers. I don't think that approach is gonna it's gonna work well for an alternative to Twitter. And I don't know whether it's something like Tribal or Post
Or
is going to
Hive.
be. Yeah, any of the, I don't know if they're going to get the amount of people to the amount of traffic. But again, I remember when I signed up for Twitter in 2007, it was relatively new. I had no idea how to use it. I said, I got to sign up for all these things. And it took me about a year to start to figure out how to use it. So there'll be a shakeout with all of these different sites. There have been all sorts of other ones over the year. There was MeWe, if you remember that one, that apparently, got a lot of right-wing nut jobs dominating there. The architecture wasn't bad on that, but it got the wrong audience. So we're going to see what happens with this. There's another one, Counter Social. I looked
Mhm.
at that one and I couldn't, to me, it was like a big blur. I don't have good vision, but it's only in dark mode, and it's like a lot of a dark background with grayish writing. I just said, and it's laid out very wide. I just said,
Yeah.
it's not for me. I can't go crazy with this. So I don't know what's going to happen, but Musk is in a lot of trouble, and he also wants to crash the dollar because he and a lot of people, he's aligned with a lot of the bring back the gold standard people
Hmm.
and a lot of the crypto people that want to get rid of the fiat currency that governments enforce. And they want to smash the US government, basically. That's what the uber libertarians are all about.
Well,
And
Jamie Dimon is not going to allow that to happen. I can tell you
no,
that
well,
right
that's where
now.
you talk about the capitalist class, the ruling class is split on this. There are some people like Diamond and certain top elements in Wall Street and others that more or less support the Democrats overall. But there's a lot of them that are supporting these ultra right wing and ultra libertarian types. So it's something to watch, this battle, and it's important to be part of this battle that takes place. So Twitter has not collapsed yet functionally, but it could at some point. A lot of people are leaving. I don't know that its traffic is down. They still seem to have a lot of discussion about sports with the World Cup and the NFL. They had a lot of discussion when the World Series was on. Sports are very key to Twitter's traffic. They haven't really lost that yet. But if it starts going haywire, as MySpace did, and people start getting viruses and malware from Twitter because you got rid of so many of their privacy and security people, then it's gonna, then it's gonna circle down the drain. One way or another, we'll see. But try out these different sites. Right now, I've signed up for a bunch of them, and for a couple of days, people go in there and they follow you. Oh, how you doing? And then I don't really see very much. So we'll see which one of these things works. I think we're all three of us on Tribal. I don't know if we're all on Post yet because they
I
still
signed up
have a
for the wait
waiting
list.
list.
Yeah, I'm on the waiting list on that. But I want to bring out one important thing about Twitter that I did see. Actually, there's a series of posts on, of all things, LinkedIn, which is the fact that what people don't also forget about Twitter's function is that from a health and safety perspective, Twitter has become the go-to platform for informing the public about events like hurricanes and snowfall.
Town hall, town square. I
Um,
mean,
yeah, as a town square from a public safety perspective for a lot of states. a lot of states and cities will put their information out there. Even things like school systems say schools are closed. They use Twitter as a platform for that. So
Right.
aside from its function as a political town hall, sort of the Union Square or what
Right.
or
Right.
Hyde Park Corner, of old, where people would all stand there on their literally on their soapboxes and rant and rave, which is, Twitter at its best. There is also a social function from a health and safety perspective, and that is really causing a lot of concern, because there's really things like, the public address system or using
Right.
text doesn't really work, and people aren't on the radios all the time anymore.
Exactly.
And television, as we know it, doesn't exist. So Twitter has become and stood in for a public service announcement, if you will, for those kinds of events. So that's something that's we have to really look at, and certainly Elon Musk could give a shit about it, but it's
Yeah, he
something
doesn't
though.
care.
I mean, he cares about his own navel, and he's in his own echo chamber of dysfunction. Unfortunately, he farts and half the world goes without something for a while. So, but meanwhile, there is a function to Twitter, or a role that Twitter has taken on as a go-to space for health and safety alerts, tsunami alerts. I mean, you name it, it's on Twitter, right?
Right.
So-
Everything, just to see if Jimmy Fallon is still alive. I mean,
right, is
it's
Jimmy
like-
Fallon still alive? And yes, there's sports
Right.
Twitter, boxing Twitter is still
Yeah,
around.
boxing Twitter
Women-
is still around. Right.
Still around. Women's boxing Twitter is around, certainly. But there is this other social function that Twitter has become sort of the de facto public square for that kind of communication. And there really is no other replacement for that. You can try it on Facebook, but it's static.
It's
the
not
thing
the
with
same.
Twitter
Yeah.
is it's a constant
Right.
flow of communication that gets amplified. Even if it's amplified incorrectly, it's amplified.
Right.
So,
Yet I would say
yes,
because
Yes.
it wasn't always like that. Twitter was only
Yeah.
Twitter wasn't established in 1776. It
no,
was
I know.
established in
It's become that.
2006, and it
Exactly.
took several years for it to get
Yes.
that by the mid 2010s at some point.
Exactly.
So maybe for the last 8-10 years it's been that. Something might develop and come along, but that's not clear which of these things is gonna be
Right.
it.
It's that interregnum period. But I'll also, and I've been saying this for a while, our note, I think it was someone had written it was the anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination on November 22nd. And there was somebody who put up some posts of, images of Walter Cronkite with a tear in his eye and all of these.
One of the last real journalists.
Right. But what it got me thinking is, and I was 9 years old when that happened, and I remember it vividly and so on, was that it was a collective experience. It's not that we had, state controlled media, but in essence, even though we had three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, we essentially had one news stream. And our experience of those events was collective.
Right.
We do not have that anymore. And in particular, in the last 10 years, in the rise of Twitter, we have gone to such a distributed and narrow casting construct, which is the opposite of broadcast, right? Broadcast is one to many, right? And now we're like one to one. It used to be, we'd all watch even The Sopranos together on HBO, and that was 20 years ago, right? Or TV shows, news programs, all of these kinds of experiences. Even if if the three of us like this exact same programs, we never experience them the same way. We don't watch them together. We don't have any kind of collective experience of that. And we don't even go to the movies anymore, right? As a collective experience of a shared understanding of or lexicon, if you will, of experience of specific items. So our interpretations also become in our own little river, our own little
Right.
channel, because
Siloed, right.
we're siloed to the point where we're literally our own channel. You know, you have a channel, I have a channel, Eddie has a channel. So we have no construct. There's nothing that binds us even anymore. So Twitter as a public square has a little bit of that function in a way that other things don't, but even the way we experience Twitter is different because we have different friends, we have different people that we follow.
Right,
it's not like
right.
we see everything that happens in Twitter. We see the people we follow or the people we follow and who they retweet or who they like. That's our experience beyond our own little narrow casting. So what this means to the body politic, what this means to us sociologically is really fascinating to me because we no longer have a shared construct. No wonder we don't understand what democracy is. We don't experience it. We have no concept of what that is. Even if we watch a debate, we're not really watching it. We're in our own small, narrow silo of experience.
Right.
We watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, I feel like, we were talking about civics classes, how we had civics classes in school. And I just don't see the government promoting democracy the way that they used to, like with ads and with posters and with this and with that. And I wonder why that is. I wonder why we're not, especially now that we're seeing where the Republican Party is clearly headed. Right. They're clearly in bed with, right. And they're like, want a civil war. I mean, that just blows my mind that there are white boys walking around right now thinking let's just start a civil war. Like, what is that going to accomplish? What are you going to do with all of us? Because I'm not going back. We're going to fight. It's going to be a fight.
Well, no, it will be at the barricades, and it's not going to. The Civil War destroyed America.
Right.
I mean, it literally destroyed the South.
Right.
So they think this is a good thing. They think terrorizing people with their AR-15s is going to succeed. I mean, it's mental. I mean, I've told this story. When I voted, I had tears in my eyes because I at the end of the day, I feel like I'm a patriot in the sense of believing in where in what this means as the project, even knowing all the horrible things that have happened in the past, that continue to happen, that there is this opportunity to make the experiment worthwhile. Well, are we at the end of the experiment? Are we then going to say, well, it did fail. It's 300 years, not even 300 years.
All empires fall.
And we failed. And then what? I'm going to get herded into a camp like my, distant cousins 70 years ago on a train going through from wherever they lived to a concentration camp. I don't think so. Right. They're going to have to take me fucking
That's
screaming.
right. And that's not happening in this lifetime. This ain't your daddy's Jim Crow. That's what I'm going to tell all these white boys out here.
It's not your daddy's Jim Crow. It is not your daddy's Hitler.
Right. This ain't the same party, yo.
So this is why it's important to look at what we know of the example of Richard Fierro, a hero in the Club Q shooting, the attempted massacre that took place. Here's a guy. He says he's just another guy, 45 years old. He went to this LGBTQ nightclub he's straight with his wife, his daughter, and the daughter's fiance to see a drag show where one of the performers went to high school with his daughter. And I don't think he had ever been to one of these before. And he said they were just having a great old time. And almost at midnight on a Saturday night, this grandson of a fascist Republican politician, Aldrich, comes in with his body armor and a rifle. I forget what kind of rifle, and a handgun, and start shooting. And the daughter's fiance was one of the people who was murdered. He's a combat veteran. He was 15 years in the army. He said he served 3 tours in Iraq, one in Afghanistan. And he was there like everybody else, probably drinking, partying, laughing at the acts, and so forth. And all of a sudden, it's back to combat. And when he heard the fire, he knew what it directly was. And he said, "You hear the fire, you go directly towards it." And he said he doesn't even remember all the details in the flurry that took place. And somehow he took this guy down. He thinks he grabbed the guy's armor and pulled him down. It's unclear. He had been a football player, but he really used a wrestling move of some sort to get him down. By the way, a friend of mine used to be one of the coaches for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he described NFL football as being 11 wrestling matches going on at once. So that's why
That's kind of
wrestling
true.
is, which, right. Well, it's coming from an
Kinda
NFL
true, yeah,
coach.
right.
And this is why wrestling is so important to any self-defense. So he took the guy down and was beating on the guy, and he had some other people help him. He had somebody pass by, and it's unclear from the media reports if the person was a trans woman or a
Oh, it was
drag
a
queen.
trans woman. It was a trans woman.
Yeah. And he said to her, who's wearing high heels, stomp on this guy's face while he held him down and was hitting him as he went for his own handgun. And the point is, he risked his life. He saved lives. He knew how to do it, and he was helped by other patrons in taking down this MAGA terrorist at the Club Q. And there are lessons in that. And I think people should look at that and be ready to do whatever they can. They may not be in a physical position to do what he did at that time, but they could help somebody do it, and they could work together to minimize the damage that's done, and they could show solidarity. He was asked about it, and he had been a major in the U.S. Army, and he said, "Why did you go there? This is my community. I love them all. I love these people. These people are part of my community." So that it was an LGBTQ club, and there were trans people and drag
It was some
queens.
everybody there.
Yeah,
Everybody was
Exactly.
there.
right, because people that haven't been to a drag show think there's only gay people
Gay
at the
folk,
club.
right.
No.
Everybody's been there, and then there are people that are fluid, and it gets very complicated. But he said they're all my community. This is the Springs. This is what they call Colorado Springs. We're the
Right.
Springs. We love them all, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned from that experience. So I encourage people to. There was an interview by the CBS affiliate in that area that had like a 20-minute interview with him that evening. He was profiled in the New York Times and at CNN and all over the place. So if you haven't seen that, look up what he did and learn the lessons there.
Yep.
And that's what we got to do in all these situations.
Absolutely.
No.
The woman's name was Kelly Loving, who stomped that man with her stiletto shoes. Go ahead, girl. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's
size
how you
11.
serve it up. That's right. That's
Bam.
right, baby. Give it to him.
Well, and here's the other thing, we are all at the intersection of a lot of different circles in our lives. And
Mhm.
scratch the surface, and there's a lot of stuff here, whether you're a member of a union, whether your sister-in-law is Black woman, whether your cousin is gay, or your daughter, or your best friend has brother is trans. Just scratch the surface. We're all there. Or you're a Black person and you have a sister who's married to an Asian man. I mean, we're all one here.
Absolutely.
We are all one, and we have to get away from this notion of this singularity. We are not individual streams here. We are
Right.
not our lone middle of the night binge watching on HBO or Disney Plus or whatever it is we do. We are more than that. We are a collective.
Mhm.
Well, that is where we draw strength from, is community. And we have to get away from this notion that there's only this singular view. We are together. We have that opportunity to bridge those gaps, to bridge those singular streams, to see that we
Mhm.
are collective, that it brings meaning to us to see the other, to have the other see us, and all be there together to understand that we deserve rights, we deserve health, we deserve the opportunity to live, to love who we want to live, to
Right.
love who we want to love, to enjoy ourselves dressed up any way we want to be dressed up. What the
Right.
fuck is
Exactly.
it
Let's
to
talk.
you?
Right.
Who
Like,
cares?
right. I am all about our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Somebody wrote
Yeah.
that into the Constitution. Pursuit of happiness.
Happiness. Yes.
Come on now. This is America. Like, somebody asked me, well, you're not going to move to Mexico? Or no, I'm not moving anywhere. I have
No.
lived all over the world. I am a Cold War veteran. And no, I'm going to stay my black ass inside these racist walls of the United States of America, because I can build community. I can work to make a change. And that's why I do what I do. And I'm hoping that folks, as Mark Elias, who is the democracy on the docket attorney, he's out here fighting these Republicans. And I may be screwing your name up, Mark Elias. But democracy is on the ballot, folks. You guys need to go out and vote, especially in Georgia. Make sure you get your butts out there.
Please.
And we need this win. So Georgia, I don't know if I need to make calls this weekend or help phone bank or send postcards or do whatever. I know right now I'm donating my Starbucks money, or actually I cut off my Twitter Blue subscription, and now I am like using that to donate to to Reverend Warnock, because I just can't imagine Herschel Walker. I cannot imagine him in the Senate at all. He doesn't deserve to be there. He actually lives in Texas. He should be disqualified. He shouldn't even be qualified to run for Senate in Georgia.
Against a man who is the inheritor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Right. You're talking about a man of cloth who, like, seriously walks the talk.
His first 2 years in the Senate, what did he do? He got us cheap insulin. Hello.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
It's so, yeah. Do you really need that extra pair of shoes? I mean, if you need it for your children because their feet are coming through the end, I get it. But do you really need that a little extra pair? Just give it to Reverend Warnock. He needs it.
That's right. That's right, folks. Well, all right. Look, that was a fantastic discussion today, folks. This is our first political/social justice edition of the War Room. So we're going to end that here till next time. Melissa, you want to tell the folks where they can find you?
Sure. I'm at Girl Boxing Now on Twitter and Instagram. And my website is girlboxing.org. Yeah, I'm when I go to other sites, I'm at Girl Boxing Now. So I'm trying these things out, but I'm on Twitter to the bitter friggin' end. I don't care. You are not taking my voice away. I am there to speak.
Right.
And boxing Twitter, yes.
Yes, boxing Twitter. You guys, boxing Twitter, you guys go out and buy her book. I just got her book. I can't wait to read it over the weekend.
Anyway,
History of Women's Boxing.
So much.
You guys get that. All right, Eddie, tell the folks where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, I'm still on Twitter at NHB News. I'm using that same username or handle on a lot of these other sites that I'm trying out. And I still have my Patreon site. I have a new article about really the international implications of all of what we've been discussing about Jean Belenyuk, who was an Olympic gold medalist wrestler and also won 2 world championships, 3 world golds, is a member of parliament in Ukraine, and is the first Black member of parliament in Ukraine. He's a member of President Zelensky's party.
Well, all right.
He's still in Ukraine fighting against the Russian war criminals. And I wrote a very short article about him, linking to other articles so people could get more in-depth interviews and discussions, including a highlight of his Olympic gold medalist match in Greco-Roman wrestling at 87 kilos in Tokyo. So look at the broader perspective too, because key to what Putin has been doing for his propaganda is anti-LGBTQ propaganda.
Right.
That's a key central part of the fascist nonsense that's coming from today's Hitler, Vladimir Putin. So look at that. So you could sign up, subscribe at patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. And of course, my website, eddiegoldman.com, where I sort of keep a list of a lot of my media activities and a lot of the stuff that's going on.
Right on, Eddie. All right, folks, you guys can find me over at Twitter while it's still around at Angry Afro Radio. And I'm on Instagram at Fight Goddess Fitness. And I am on Tribal. You guys need to find me on Tribal at Fight Goddess. And until next time, guys, you look, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and then turn on your notifications and so you know next time we drop a video. Thank you for tuning in. This is War Room, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace, love, and push-ups. Boom.